Now, as far as response to the protests, U.S. President Barack Obama has uttered some words in support of the protests. Of course, we've heard those, but he hasn't gone there. He's been out trying to sell his jobs bill to swing states over the last few days, a bill that has so far failed in the Senate. But one sympathizer who you maybe wouldn't expect is here to talk about the issues head on and his solutions. My next guest, he is in finance. He's president of Pento Portfolio Strategies. It's Michael Pento himself. Michael, thank you for being on the show. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you, as always, Lauren.
As always. Now, you are not someone, Michael, who I or probably anyone else would peg as a sympathizer or supporter of Occupy Wall Street. But when I was talking to you at a conference last week, you were saying that you sympathized, you understood why they were out there. And you know what, Michael? I think in some of that footage, I maybe saw you out there in New York with one of those signs that said tax the rich. Was that you?
Yeah, that was me.
That's what I thought.
Good point, Lauren. I got to tell you, these protesters, I don't agree with their solutions. I'm quite sure of that. But these protesters have a visceral understanding that the middle class has been wiped out by our government and our Federal Reserve.
Now, I want to get to all that, but first, Michael, I just want to clarify for our viewers who maybe don't know you. Could we bring up the New Yorker cover that shows some of the bankers, their version? I want to know if, just to be clear, you identify yourself as one of these guys on the New Yorker. I don't know if you can see that cover, but it's bankers that want things as they are, or if you identify with the 99%.
Well, I'm probably one of those 1%ers, I could assure you that, but I could say this to you. We need to reestablish our manufacturing base in this country. You know, manufacturing as a percentage of GDP in 1953 was 28% of the economy. It has fallen steadily all the way down to 11% of the economy. We need to end the Federal Reserve, which has caused real median incomes to drop 10% in the last 4 years alone. We are eradicating the middle class. These people are sick and tired of being abused by our government and by our central bank. And it's not just Americans, it's Greeks, it's Italians, it's Western Europe, it's the Japanese. These people are saddled with debt, their incomes have been eradicated, and unemployment rates are way too high. These people should not be shunned or treated as pariahs. They have a legitimate and bona fide gripe, and it should be addressed in the appropriate manner.
And you heard him. This is coming from a 1%er saying that these guys have a reason to be out there. I want to touch on a couple of things that you talked about, but first, why do you blame the Fed for the economic problems that we're seeing?
Well, what the Federal Reserve does, and you have to understand this, Lauren, you and your viewers have to understand that the Federal Reserve was established to make banks money. That is their goal. What they do is they increase the money supply that outstrips the amount of savings available to be loaned. So what they do is they increase and counterfeit your currency. They drop interest rates. So now when you go to the bank and you put money, your savings in the bank, you get almost nothing. Yet what they're also doing when they create and counterfeit money is creating inflation. So long-term interest rates rise, short-term interest rates are manipulated lower. That's your yield curve or yield spread. That's where your banks make money. So they have a increasing margin and a lot more money to loan out. And they impoverish and bankrupt the middle class. You know, when real incomes fall, your discretionary purchasing power drops. And then taken to the extreme, guess what? The middle class can only afford the basic necessities. They don't have any discretionary purchasing power. And that means the economy falters and the GDP drops and unemployment rates skyrocket.
Now, Michael, sorry, I didn't mean to step on your tongue. I just want to get in here real quick. So what you're suggesting, if the United States ends the Fed, ends the Federal Reserve Bank, and say some banks go bankrupt in the U.S., and Americans lose their money, that's going to be a lot of pain, right?
Oh, wait, hold on. First of all, FDIC insurance has been raised to $250,000. So I don't think many of these protesters have an account at their local bank more than $250,000. And that's each account. You can spread it over many different names. So they're not going to lose money. We need to let these fat cat bankers fail. We bailed out Wall Street banks on the backs of the middle class. And I stand toe-to-toe with these protesters. I don't agree with some of their egalitarian socialistic solutions. They might not agree with my solutions whatsoever, but they have a legitimate gripe, and it must be addressed.
But what is the solution to something like inequality? Because on the one hand, you're saying that it's because prices have risen. On the other hand, it's because wages for working people have stagnated over the last 30 years.
Right. Well, you need to bring back, first of all, you need to bring back the manufacturing base. You have to lower the corporate tax rate so we can be more competitive. You have to address the unrealistic wage recommendations that unions are offering. You have to reduce regulations, and then incomes will fall in nominal terms, but real incomes will rise because their taxes will be lower and their inflation rates will be lower. So their purchasing power will increase. Then when we can compete with our overseas competitors on a more fair level.
But what would that mean? What would that mean for average folks without unions, with no regulations? Does that mean people are working for slave wages in order to compete with folks in China?
We don't have to compete with the Chinese one for one in the textile industry. We have a very high level of manufacturing in this country. We can develop more jobs like Boeing in the aerospace field. We don't have to compete one for one with slave labor in China. No, we do not have to do that.
But what do wages go to for average people? Do they go lower?
Sorry?
But what do wages do for average people in the U.S.? Do they go lower to be more competitive?
In nominal terms, Lauren, wages have to fall. So
they have to go lower, you said.
But not in real terms. In other words, if I told you that you can make $40 an hour working for GM, but I can tell you you can make $30 and $40 and not have a job, or you can make $30 and have a job, yet your tax rate will be lower, and your purchasing power will be increased by reducing the amount of inflation, so your real wages would go further. You wouldn't have a problem with that. And we could increase the number of people employed in this country.
All right, Michael, we're out of time. I'm going to have to run those numbers by my analysts here, and when I do, we'll have you back on the show to talk about them. Until then, I look forward to seeing you again out there with your sign, tax the rich, eat the rich. I certainly appreciate you being on the show, Michael. Sorry, we're out of time. We'll have you on again. That was Michael Pento, president of Pento Portfolio Strategies.